Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Damn Music Show. We have a very special edition for you all today. My name is Micah Wagner. Of course, this is Darren Dreyowitz. And then we have joining us today Dr. Michele Ramsey, who is an associate professor of communication arts and sciences and women's studies at Penn State. Thank you, Michele, for joining us.
Hi. I'm actually at Penn State Berks. I want to make that little distinction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, today is going to be an interesting conversation and a topic I've been interested in a long time. So this week, Billie Eilish, who is arguably the biggest pop star on the planet right now, came out with a new cover photo routine, not a cover photo shoot for the British version of Vogue magazine. It was done in lingerie and jackets. And if you go on social media, which I do a lot for my profession, in my opinion, she got clobbered a lot of body shaming, a lot of just changing her image shaming. And we are going to discuss the challenges that female artists and musicians face in the world, a world today with social media and just image. And this is something that Dr. Ramsey has taught at her university for a long time, and she's an expert in the field. So that is a long setup. Sorry for that, but it is an interesting and important and sometimes very serious topic. So that's what we're going to do today. So, Dr. Ramsey, have you seen the photos of Billie Eilish, and what is sort of your initial reaction to the photos and everybody's reaction in social media?
Yeah, so I did. I have to admit that I didn't see it until you told me about it. I'm going to have my head in other things right now, but I did see them. I did go to Vogue and read the article, and I did go to Twitter and read all the comments that, or most of the comments that were linked to Vogue's tweet with the image. And so there... this is an incredibly complex and multi-layered and multi-dimensional discussion. I teach an entire course in gender in the media, so I could talk for 15 weeks about this. So I'm just going to touch on some of the stuff that we might discuss in a class on this. The first, in terms of like, why is this happening? The first thing I'll say is it's really unfair. When you see people freak out over Billie Eilish or Taylor Swift or Christina Aguilera or Britney Spears, a lot of times people are freaking out because they're doing the same things that everybody else is doing. I mean, Taylor Swift gets all kinds of trash for how many people she dates. But how many people did we date in college? Like when we were in our 20s. Right. Doing anything the rest of the world doesn't already do, but they do it on the national stage, international stage, and that makes a difference somehow. And they have to live the awkward teen and early adult moments on the stage with lots of commentary now, thanks to social media. So I want to point that out first, right? That they're not doing anything that a lot of people don't already do. Second, we have a real double standard when it comes to gender and sexuality in this country, and in most countries. You just have to think back to high school, right? And the guys that could sleep around, or college, the guys that could sleep around, that was a good reputation. But you weren't allowed to have a good reputation if you were a female, behaving in that same way, right? You're categorized as a slut, as easy, as somebody, not worthy of appreciation. And so you see that double standard played out too. You see Justin Timberlake and Justin Bieber go from being child stars to bringing sexy back, and nobody says a word. Mm-hmm. But females make those same moves, and it becomes very controversial. And that's because of that double standard. Third, regardless of context, men tend to be judged on their actions, and women tend to be judged on their appearance. And again, it doesn't matter. It's not just the music industry. It's law firms. It's politics. It's everywhere. And so we can expect that women get more flack about these kinds of things than men for that reason as well. Finally, and I think really the most important answer to the why is this happening question for me is understanding that gender is performative, that it is learned, and that it is socially constructed. So what does all that mean? It means that gender is changes, right? It used to be the case in the early days of this country that masculinity meant high-heeled boots and tights and powdered faces and wigs for men, right? It doesn't anymore. That's changed. So that's what I mean when I say gender socially constructed. There is no natural feminine or masculine look. It's all socially constructed and it changes. It's learned, right? We learn these behaviors. In fact, my students are floored when they read in their textbook that children know by the age of 2 what some gendered expectations of them are.
Wow.
We hold and coddle little girls. We tell little boys to go out and be active and explore. And we are already teaching kids so much about gender that by the age of 2 and 3, they can understand concepts of what I can and can't do because of what people say my sex is.
That's amazing. Really, that's amazing. Like, the
It is.
age blew my mind. 3 would have been still surprising to me, but less. But 2 is a very powerful number for me to be like, wow, like really the things we're minimally doing are really
Yeah,
impacting what's happening. That's amazing.
right. And I have friends that oh, but my boy wanted to play with trucks from a very early age, and I'm like, well, right, because by 2 they know they're supposed to.
Yeah.
They
Wow.
see it in advertising, they see it in books that you read them, and they know they are. We don't give children's brains the credit that they deserve,
Sure.
and so absolutely, kids know it at a very young age, and it
That's
shocks me
amazing.
too. It still
That's
shocks
amazing.
me.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So
Um, Go ahead.
definitely we understand and we agree, of course, that it is a multi-layered, complex situation, and it's ingrained in our culture and in our brains and learned. But I'm equally curious about Miley Cyrus, Taylor Swift, Billie Eilish, even the Dixie Chicks, when they go from this age of Nickelodeon, Disney star age, 14, 15, they all seem to feel compelled to have this big to do coming out. I'm no longer a little girl. And they go aggressive about it. And there's such a pushback. Men, well, do men have to do that same thing? And is it just different? Why, as it relates to pop culture, why do women feel the need? Is it to overcome all that complexity and prejudice?
And can I just add slightly
Yeah,
on
that
that?
was a 4-minute question.
No, it's a
Sorry.
great question. My ad is that I think we, at least I certainly do too, assume what Darren said is correct. And
Right.
I haven't really spent much time on the struggles that young males go through. That's not the point of this conversation, but you being a PhD in and around, I imagine, more than just understanding how a woman's role is. I'm very curious if you have any little caveats on that as well. I'd love to focus on the transition that women go through, especially with Billie Eilish, because I'm a huge Eilish fan. But I am just curious to get over there are preconceived notions and assumptions. And it is 2021. We got lots of work to do, but it's not 1970. And so trying to understand where we're at, which I'll bet you know a lot more than we do.
Yeah. Okay. So y'all, that's a lot. You kind of everything that all my notes you just kind of covered.
Solve all of our problems.
Solve
all
them
of our
now.
problems
You've
right
got
now.
5 minutes. Get it done.
I haven't done it. I've been doing this since the 90s, and it's 2 steps forward and 1 step back. I mean, that's kind of the way I always see most social justice and issues. And we have to go back to performance of gender, right? And so men perform gender too. And it is absolutely the case that since I started teaching, the expectations, the gendered expectations of men have changed too. And I always tell my students, women are tapped out. Like we hate everything about ourselves. All right. Advertising, sorry, Darren. Advertising has absolutely made us hate everything about ourselves. Men have been largely absent from those kinds of pressures. But now marketers, well, not now, it's been going on for a couple of decades. They realize they have this untapped market. And so now you see body lotions and face lotions and body sprays,
Mm-hmm.
calf implants, ab implants for males.
Yeah.
And there's not anything natural about it. It's just this industry that has tapped women out, is now trying to find a new group to hate themselves, right? So they
Mm-hmm.
can sell them something to make them feel better. And so men absolutely have lots of those pressures, but um, when they adhere to those pressures, right? When Justin Timberlake brings sexy back, when Justin Bieber does whatever he does, Jonas Brothers, that was, those were my niece's big idols. That double standard makes a difference in how we respond to it.
Yeah.
And men have a wider range. Women don't. Women, we talk about the Madonna whore dichotomy, and what that means is that women tend to be categorized as good or bad. And
Yes.
we
Yeah.
have, if you look at pop culture, that's really where they are. I mean, there's not a lot of in between. I mean, and the stuff that really grabs our attention and I think grabs momentum is stuff that manages to go in between those spaces and challenge some of that stuff. But it's still really out there. And there is no Madonna whore complex for men. And so I think that makes a big difference, that women have very restricted ways of performing gender. And that sounds weird given that so much fashion and makeup and personal product stuff is geared towards women, to say that they don't have many options. They have lots of options for how to get to two spaces. And that's the good and the bad, the Madonna and the whore. And so why do I'm not sure that Britney and Taylor and I think the Dixie Chicks are a little different, right? They got put in the public spotlight because of their words. I don't remember them having like this huge shift. Maybe you do, Darren, because I know they played where we grew up. But
Well, you said something that is kind of the heart of one of my many questions, but you said women get put in good or bad. I agree with that.
Yeah.
My belief in the particular transition from young to mature is that when you see Hannah Montana and you see Billie Eilish, who came out when she was 16, in the public's eye, they're still in the good category. And then whenever they're 19 and 20 and 21 and they start talking about adult things, regardless what it is, they're not the sweet, innocent, good girl anymore. And the public wants to keep them in that good category. And anything they do, Billie Eilish, who's 19, and by the way, I think the lingerie is full body. You can see more skin at the beach than you can this photo shoot. I think she now doesn't. Billie Eilish specifically, she has that oversized sweater, boyish looks by traditional construct with Connie's
Mhm.
and big jeans, and now oh she has curves now. She had curves when she was 16 too. Just now at 19, she's changing her look. Which, by the way, artists and musicians should change their look because you get bored of them. And I think people are just reacting to she's not the good girl anymore. Am I right about that?
It's hard to say the people, right? Everybody has their different interpretations. But yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. I think too, like I said before, she's also just doing what most people do. I didn't look like
Yes.
Yeah.
this in high school.
Yeah.
Right.
I grew up, I played soccer, I was a tomboy all through junior and high school. And it wasn't until I went to college, I was in a different space. People hadn't known me since first grade. And you develop and you change and you make decisions. And there's nothing wrong with that. I
Yeah.
mean, I think that's the
It's
core of
Oh.
this, is there's
right.
nothing wrong. Hmm?
Everyone goes through this. To your point, I don't get why these celebrities are held to
Is
a different standard, different corral. Go ahead, Mike.
Is
I see you
there a
trying to say something.
base level psychology? We are just basic creatures at the end of the day. And when something does something different than me and I'm not comfortable, I have an immediate response to attack. Because if I attack it and it's bad and it's wrong, then I'm right. But if somehow it's still right, then I could be wrong. And I feel like there's this kind of very strong drive in society of that psychology and mentality. If you're not comfortable in the things that you are, which frankly, I've met very few people that are fully comfortable in the way they are, but comfortable to a level, I feel like that's when a lot of the lashing comes out. They're not comfortable in their own skin to let someone else do their thing. So if they attack it and it's bad and it's wrong, they're just justifying to themselves. Am I at all on the right page here of some like baseline psychology that's causing some real angst, anger, and venom in attacks, which is what's happening?
It's always hard to tell if it's psychology or sociology. But regardless of which one it is, we compare ourselves.
Right.
That's just what we do. And a social comparison plays a large role. And I think what plays a big role in what you're talking about is the sexual repression. Sorry, my lights go off automatically in my office. The sexual repression that we have in this country in particular. The reason why, the most porn is downloaded in the Bible Belt. And the reason why you can have women's breasts all over billboards and all over your television, but the moment a woman steps in the public sphere and tries to feed her child with them while they're covered up,
right,
it's
right,
moral panic,
right.
And so there is that sexual repression piece where oh, how dare she, and it usually is she. There's that piece to it. I think one of the things that set me off a little bit about this, because I want to be clear, it's absolutely okay for people to perform gender however they want. There is not a right way to perform gender. And there, by the way, are not just two, right? Masculinity, femininity, and then there are a million points in between. We are sometimes more feminine and sometimes more masculine. There's not one spot, right? But I think one of the reasons people are having a hard time with Billie Eilish is the choice that she made. And if you don't think that I'm right when I say gender is performative, Madonna, Jane Mansfield, Marilyn Monroe, Caitlyn Jenner, all pretty much looked exactly the same on magazine covers, nude corsets. So there isn't anything, I think that's what prickles some people a little bit. There isn't anything profound or earth-shattering about Billie Eilish's choice. It's incredibly, incredibly normal. And it's sexist. And it's a particular male gaze ideal of womanhood that she's chosen. And I think that's where people have the most issue. And it's also the idea of the corset, right? That is a very culturally loaded piece of clothing. Like you said, Darren, it's more coverage than you see somebody wearing on the beach, but it has this history of reining in women's bodies, literally and figuratively. And so I think,
I did not know that.
People may not go, oh, it's the corset but I think that's there. I think that's just this. Wow, that's an unfortunate choice of lingerie to wear, because it does have that cultural baggage with it. And when you're Eilish, when you're a tomboy to some extent, right? She talks in that article and says, "Look, I covered up because it was uncomfortable with my body, and I'm more comfortable with it now." There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But I think that throws some of her, especially I think her younger fans, for a little bit of a loop, because they're not there yet. And so it's not just the change, but it's the choice that she made when she decided to make this.
But isn't that almost every young woman's tale, that they grow more comfortable with themselves? So
their fan base is still younger. Typically, I was going to ask that has to be so hard for, like, I look at Billie and start sympathizing with Billie. I mean, fully. And I feel like one of the hardest things she had to have been processing, completely unfair for me to just jump inside her mind, but I can't help it.
Right.
It has to be, what are my younger fans going to think of this? And me being comfortable with that. So when I saw that come out, I was like, man, what a strong movement for her as she finds herself, knowing it's actually going to be harder for her younger female fan base that affiliate with Billie. And now they're going to go, I don't see myself like that. Hopefully it's empowering, but I imagine that had to be a big
I,
burden for her as
I,
she made that
I
adjustment.
well, I that makes me insane because we are holding performers to a higher standard of leadership than we do our leaders in this country. That I don't get it. But let me ask. Here's a question I
I can
really
tell you
would
why.
like
I
your.
mean,
Oh, please,
I can
please
say
do. And
something
then
to
I
that
have
just real
another
quick.
question.
But yeah,
Yeah.
let me say something to that real quick. She's become what scholars call a site of struggle.
Mm,
And what that means is that all of um, our fear, our concerns,
mm,
our desires, our challenges, our questions, all of that stuff surrounding gender and how we represent ourselves, all of those debates are getting played out on her body
on
right now.
her, man. Ugh. Yeah,
And
that's
we
hard.
do that to celebrities all the time.
Yeah.
Now we do it in politics too, right? How often, except for Obama's tan suit, you never heard anybody talk about what men wear, but you constantly hear about Hillary's pantsuit or Kamala's
That's
whatever.
true.
And so we
Right.
play these really difficult cultural discussions out on public figure bodies all the time, and that's what I think is happening to her. And I think she's smart enough to realize she probably expected
Oh yeah,
uh, this to happen.
for
She
sure.
seems bright to me. But
So
um, still, she made a
so
very
here's
traditional choice.
Which I
here's
didn't
the
think about at all until you said. Sorry, go for it, Dan.
yeah. No, this is thank you again, Dr. Ramsey, for
Mhm.
your time. We really didn't have a scheduled certain amount of time. That this is my biggest question I'm most curious about it as it relates to Billie Eilish, and this is a topic on the broad. So Mike and I were chatting about this earlier this week, and here's our thoughts. And I would like my question is, do you agree with it? And if so, can you give us any insights as to why this is the case? When it comes to the shaming, I feel like the men do the shaming sort of in a small group behind her back, like two or three men. Like, did you see Billie Eilish? I can't believe they did that. But I feel like the women do more public shaming in the social media, and I feel like it's more mean spirited. The men are judgmental, but the women is just downright mean spirited. Am I right about that? And do you have any insights as to why that's possibly true?
Well, when I looked at the Twitter comments, I didn't see a huge. Now I didn't count. I didn't do a content analysis or anything, but I didn't see a huge trajectory towards females making comments versus
Hmm.
males. It seems it's, and again I could be wrong, but the bit that I looked at was a little bit of both. I think that um, one of the things about gender norms for women is we're not allowed to be competitive. When a woman is competitive, we call her all kinds of bad things. She's not assertive. She's aggressive.
Mm,
She's not um, going for something she wants. She's a bitch, or even worse, she's a castrating bitch, right? Because she
mm,
might get it from a guy.
mm,
And so when women compete, and we do have to compete, right? We think about the small percentage of women that are in power politically, the small percentage of women who are CEOs of major companies, the small percentage of women in pretty much any profession. There's a little space for people who aren't white male, and everybody that's not white male is competing for that space. And
Mm.
so I think there is a competition that is tougher in a lot of ways for people who aren't white and male. And I'm not, I haven't done research into sort of the bullying behaviors of females, especially on social media. Um, but I do think that women being competitive or, uh, or something along those lines is often pointed out, the spotlight is put on it, and it's cat fighting and it's being catty. And so I'm not sure to what extent we're seeing those comments through our own biases, which I think a lot of us have that lens, because we learn that catfighting gender expectation, um, or not. I don't know. Um,
Yeah,
I will
that's fine.
say there
Look,
were.
as you,
Oh, I
it's
just
like you
want to say
said,
one
this
thing.
is
There
complex. Yeah.
there are, but there, and to speak to that complexity, there were a lot of comments on Twitter that were very positive, and a lot speaking to girl power, right? The
Yeah.
with that lovely concept the Spice Girls brought to us in the 90s. Um, the idea that if you somehow take control of your sexuality, you have a certain amount of power, and you do. But um, what what image are you going to portray? And again, that gets back to that whole question of the choice that Billie Eilish made. And I think if there had been a different choice made, there would be a different response. But that was a very, I mean, conservative, little c, conservative. That was a very conservative choice in terms of coming out uh, as a sexual woman.
Mm,
And I want to say again, there's nothing wrong with that choice.
mhm,
That's her choice to make.
mhm,
But that choice has consequences. And it's one of a
I don't.
million choices.
Yeah, I will never understand why people care about this.
mhm.
I don't.
I guess
But
we all
I
like the spotlight. We all like fame, and it's like it's at the end of the day, it's something to do, right? And people will do that probably forever and
no, I mean,
beyond.
I don't understand.
But
Mike, you said earlier, we're all basic psychology. Maybe I'm basics. It's super basic. Maybe I'm a basic bitch. But I don't understand why anyone cares if Billy is sexual. We all are. I don't understand why people care that she's on this magazine cover. More power to it. I don't understand how this matters at all. It is 1000% normal. We all go through this grow up transition phase, and I will never understand it. But as you know, thanks to Dr. Ramsey, we understand it a little bit better. Um, I would like to have these conversations every few months if you like,
do,
if you want. If we
do
could
I
be
get a
so bold to ask that,
certification
we put
for?
you on the
d-
spot. But I guess to be continued with the conversation, right, Micah? I don't. I'd like for you to get one last question in, Micah. But this is a fascinating topic, and Dr. Ramsey, we talk about this on our show a lot. We just do it within the context of other episodes. We've never had a dedicated
Mhm.
conversation about this, but it is, we're not going to solve the world's problems on one call, that's for sure. But I certainly enjoy the conversation. Mike, I'm going to not let you, I'm going to ask you that you ask the last question and
Sure.
take us out after that last combo.
Sure. My question for you, Dr. Ramsey, is do I get 3 hours of credit at Penn State Berks for this 25-minute session? No, that's not my question. I actually have a statement. My statement is merely this. It's something I'm very passionate about, and I know other people are too. Words matter. And we need to be careful and we need to be kind with them. And from everything you said, it just re-hit me again and re-solidified how important it is that we say things like that to anyone. So in this case, women, and we say she's a bitch as opposed to she's driven.
Mhm.
It's not fair. I still have a number of friends that I hang out with in multiple circumstances that say something, and so many times I do try and just kind of comment and say something. They all make fun of me and I get bashed. Like, I typically say gender preference is
You're
not an insult. Like when somebody
Mhm.
says, that's gay, I'm like, gender preference
Yeah.
is not an insult. And
Yeah.
all of, the people around me, whether they're friends or different spheres, are always like, oh, they huff. And I'm like, 5 years from now, you're gonna be like, dude, I'm sorry. You know, I
Yeah.
I wish we could do more of that. And I'll bet that what everything you said made me just keep thinking, man, I really need to be careful with my words.
We do. We
I
do.
just
Good point. I want to say
I
just really two quick things. Is that all right, Darren?
yeah, absolutely.
To your comment, Darren, I want to say I don't think we really care about Billie Eilish. Like I said, she becomes a site of struggle for us, and we play
Right.
out our own problems with gender over her body because it's public and it's something we can all share. And we all have in common. And so that's where those
Right.
conversations happen. I don't think people particularly care about Billie Eilish and her choice. I think they just care about the choice, period.
Mm.
Second, I want to say, in terms of like what you're talking about, Micah, how this can get better. Um, like I said, kids know gender at age 2, and we don't. I didn't have gender communication. I didn't have a gender class until I was in college.
Yeah.
And so, if you want to help your kids, find books that are gender neutral and get them into gender. There's all kinds of camps. And my niece in where you guys are in Austin, she's been to one called Camp She, and they teach this stuff. They teach young women how to sort of fight some of these issues. The second thing I would say is it's not just up to women, and it's not just about educating women. Like I've said a million times, on college campuses, I see all the time programming for how women can avoid rape. I very rarely see programming on how men shouldn't rape,
Yeah.
or how men who are bystanders
That's
should do something,
yes.
right? And
Yes.
so it's not just when I teach gender, I'm not teaching just feminism. Um, Feminism is for everybody. It's not just for women. I'm teaching gender studies too, and that means we learn a lot about masculinity as well. And so femininity and masculinity are defined by each other. When you define one in one way, the other's definition changes too. We've got to start training little boys and little girls to think differently about gender. I think what's brilliant about this time in our history is we actually have kids in elementary school making decisions about their gender for us, and saying, I, I don't buy this binary stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm actually learning a lot from kids now.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we've got to teach from a very early age what these things are and how they can impact us, and how to make better choices, I guess.
Well, let's get that back in schools younger and get music back in schools younger too. As we're taking all the good stuff away, Darren, let's make a children's book. We'll call it the Growing Up the Damn Way. And we'll help by all means. Dr. Ramsey, thank you so much. I mean, this
Yeah,
is
thanks for having me.
this is a pleasure. I love talking about these things, especially with people that actually have really done research, not brief search, as I call it, when you get into an argument and somebody Googles it and gives you their opinion.
Wow,
Thank you.
I use
No,
that in class.
please.
No
I
research.
I'm gonna coin it. I've been trying forever. Brief search. It's when you're in a fight and you Google and then you just read the first thing that comes off. You haven't done any research. You've briefly
Oh,
looked something up, and I'm over it.
yep.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure having you. Everybody, as always, you can go follow and find Dr. Ramsey's work at Penn State Berks. You have a book, right, that was released not too long ago. Can you tell us what that book is and where people can find it?
Yeah. It's called Major Decisions: College Career and the Case for the Humanities. It was unfortunately released the week that the world went into lockdown for an international pandemic. So that was excellent luck on my side. But it really actually addresses in larger ways exactly what you just said, Micah, how we have moved education away from the humanities and towards professional degrees and STEM. And so it's a book that talks about, okay, what do you learn in humanities courses? How, and more importantly, for the bottom line, the fact that when you look at what employers say they want from college graduates, by and large, that's the stuff you're learning in your humanities courses: communication skills, written, oral communication, group communication, interpersonal, all that stuff that you learn in the humanities. And so it's an argument about why we need the humanities. And also it's data to show people that you can major in the humanities and know you're not going to end up being a barista. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but you can get excellent employment even in STEM fields. I always use the example of Alexa. College or computer engineers create that product, but who do you think's deciding what she says?
Oh, that's fantastic.
I'm not a computer scientist, right? When somebody asks,
That's
"Hey, tell me
fantastic.
about me too," it's
That's
not a computer
fantastic.
science person deciding what to say. So people in the humanities can get great jobs even in STEM,
I love it.
and
And
that's what it's about.
I have a degree in English and a minor in philosophy and music, but I built my own companies and I run my own studio and
Yep.
things, so things can happen. It can be okay. That's fantastic. I look forward to giving it a read. If I was a good interviewer, I would have already read it, but alas, we're here today. Thank you so much, Darren.
Yeah.
You want to close it out?
Yeah, so Dr. Ramsey, this is a show about music, and you gave us a ton of insights about the complexity of gender roles, not only in music, but in life in general. And I will leave it by saying that you are a true rock star, and
Agree.
we are glad to
Thank-
have you on the Damn Music Show. Thank you so much.
yeah. Thank you so much for having me. Darren has been a lifelong friend, so it's lovely to be able to work this way.
I love it. Fantastic.
Thank
Cheers,
you.
everybody. Smash that subscribe, follow along, and go check out Dr. Ramsey and all of her work. We'll catch you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.